I would say this. People often ask me, like, do I have any regrets? And the truth of the matter is I don't regret anything because I believe everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. I'm exactly where I need to be right now to live out my vision and help people and so forth. And I wouldn't change a thing. But if I had to pick one, the only thing I would say is this. I wish that sooner or earlier on in my life, I reached out and I asked for support and I found a mentor and I was able to accumulate guidance from people that had experience doing things that I wanted to be good and that I didn't have. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now and help mentoring and guiding people to fulfill their destinies and so forth. And so simply put, ask for support. Don't be shy. Don't think of asking for help as a pain. I challenge you to change your perspective and think about this. Asking for help, support, guidance is actually a pleasure. And if you don't do that and you think you have to do it alone, associate pain with that concept because we don't get to be here forever. We don't have a sequel. Not speaking about religions, whatever the case may be, but there's a short time here. So reach out, ask for support, find guidance, even if it's just an indirect mentor. Follow someone on social media who's doing great things. Take a look at what they're doing. Listen to Erica's podcast, whatever the case may be. Just grab tools and tangible techniques from wherever you can and be a sponge and don't have an ego.
Perfect. Welcome my guest, Craig Siegel. He is a keynote speaker, entrepreneur, mindset coach, and breakthrough manufacturer. Although lucrative, Craig left his stable career on Wall Street to go all in on his passion and purpose during the pandemic. He created what the world would know now as Cultivate Lasting Symphony, which means to acquire the edge that makes you unstoppable in all facets of life. CLS is all about transformation, to cultivate that edge that lasts forever, to empower you by revamping your entire mindset and what you thought was possible in your life. Craig believes the most dynamic people are those that can dictate their inner experience, and he helps facilitate that by allowing people to tap into their own potential and access their own magic and manufacture gigantic breakthroughs in their life. Hey, Craig Siegel, I am so honored to have you on Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. As I was mentioning, we are so aligned in missions. I know you're all about passion and purpose and living a fulfilled life and igniting that light within your soul to live very purposeful and just to go big in life. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. And like I was saying also, preparation breeds confidence. But aside from that, I'm also a big fan of yours. We've been connecting on social media for quite some time. And I'm not kidding, we are very in line with a lot of our core values. So you have my word, we will absolutely manufacture magic together here today.
I have no doubt. So funny enough, you're sitting, which I know you normally stand. You're very engaged in your interviews and it's really awesome, but it's nice. I feel, like I'm sitting. So I'm comfortable.
But I'm still coming in hot and bringing the fire for you.
But of course, I actually think I started following you. Did you do UPW virtual last year?
I wasn't like in the event, but
No?
I've been around some of like the Facebook groups and stuff like that.
So maybe that's where I stumbled upon you. I'm not sure, but you've been in my Facebook for a while. So it's great to see your face in person, well, live or virtually that is, but so anyways, Craig, I want people to get to know you. I want to bring us back to where you're coming from and how you got to where you're at today. But first, I want to talk about your previous success, the career you were in, and what made you pivot, because it is something very recent that actually just happened last year.
Yeah. So for the last 10 years or so, as you can imagine, being a business owner in Manhattan, it's go, go, go. If you're not going 200 miles an hour, you're going to get run over. So I was in the finance world for quite some time after college, and ultimately I ended up pivoting from there because, as you can imagine, like with the stock market and so forth, there's just so much unpredictability. And so I started my own business, which we provided working capital to businesses all across the country. And although very lucrative and for the most part stress-free, just wasn't lighting my soul on fire, from being 100% transparent with you, Erica. But I didn't even realize to the extent of how unhappy I was until the pandemic. Like, I've been using running as an outlet over the last couple of years. I recently got into running. I started running marathons, super cool, but not to be a professional runner, just because I had all this bottled up energy. And when the pandemic happened, last March, I shut down my office for what I thought was going to be 2 weeks, because who knew back then? And I knew this for certain. I knew I wasn't happy. And I put myself into that frequency to kind of be abundant to what else is out there. And I looked myself in the mirror and had that tough conversation with myself. Like, am I really happy? And to be honest with you, I was more miserable than I realized, because I never had a moment. I shouldn't say I never had one. I never took a moment to kind of reassess and ask myself these important questions over the last few years as a business owner. It's go, go, go. So when I had that moment to reassess, and like my other business stood still, I just realized that I wasn't making a dent in the universe, for lack of better words, and wasn't exactly like doing anything that I believe was my purpose. And so, and I even got deep with myself. I was like, if this was it for me, and like my funeral was in a couple of weeks, like what would my legacy be? Like, yeah, I made an impact on some great friends and family, but like, what would the world think? And so, make a long story short, I felt that tap on my shoulder, and it was like, of course. I've always been obsessed with personal development. Like for the last 10 years, just studying neuro-linguistic programming and NLP and how to reprogram the mind and the brain and so forth. I always loved this stuff, and I utilized it to have success in business and the marathons and even relationships. I just never thought I would make it my life. So at that moment, literally, then once I had these conversations and I got a little spiritual with myself, the next day on a run, I thought of it. I pulled over in Central Park and I bought the domain to what I called Cultivate Lasting Symphony, which is a play on my initial CLS, and literally just put together this whole vision. And I worked backwards, reverse engineered it. And the rest, as they say, is history. But I can tell you this, now that I'm helping people, we're doing the mindset work, obviously the podcast, the speaking engagements, I'll be doing this in some fashion for the rest of my life. I'm absolutely standing inside my vision. And as you like to say, I've never felt more aligned.
I love it. Well, I think a lot of us can relate to COVID being a little awakening. And that is the gift of COVID. Is I remember saying the same thing, because I was the go, go, go. And I had a very busy schedule, being self-employed for a long time, not fulfilled. It's not my purpose. I certainly wasn't passionate about my job. And finally, when COVID hit, I'm like, okay, this is finally the time to slow down. I have time. So I saw it as an asset to take action towards changing what I don't like, which was mostly directly proportionate with my career. And so I remember the same thing. Finally, yes, this gift of time to actually ask those important questions, like, what do I truly want? What is my purpose? And I think a lot of people could relate to, number one, asking ourselves that question, but not getting the answers. So if you were to guide people on how to discover first, say, the passion, and then how that could actually be a purpose in life to actually feel like you're making a mark on the world. Because I actually just interviewed somebody, Stephen Kotler, and he talks about discovering your passion and purpose. But I want to hear how you think, because I know, you pretty much discovered it like this, took action, and boom, big. So I want to hear your input on that.
I know my rise of CLS looks really, meteoric to the outside world, and I'm very humbled and grateful about that. But make no mistake about it, I don't have a ton of balance right now. I'm working so hard. But to be honest with you, there's something else I'd rather be doing. In regards to specifically your question, I think that passion and purpose are not the same thing, right? So like I was always passionate about the reprogramming of the mind and personal development and transformations and just elevating my state and confidence and so forth. But I didn't realize that was my purpose. So once the pandemic happened and I had that moment, then it hit me. I was like, if this is the thing that I absolutely love the most, to help people, and I have a gift to be able to communicate, to make people want to get better, I need to turn this into something and make this my life, because I've never failed at something that I put my all into. And to be honest with you, and I said, again, very humbly, I've had success in many different areas with things that I wasn't even that passionate about, but I understood the strategies and I got better at them, such as some of the business ventures or even running and so forth. But this personal development stuff is very natural to me. Like I love it. There's nothing I'd rather be doing always than like sharpening the axe. And like I was always more of a homebody, like, but people wanted to go out and sure, I've had my fun, but for the most part, I love like a good book and like taking notes and journaling and sharpening the axe. That's what gets me fired up, in case you couldn't tell from my passion right now. And so I just went all in. For me, it was a no-brainer. I never had that idea before. So once I did, I associated going back, doing something I didn't love. This is going to sound kind of deep, but I had to make it very real for myself. I associated that with death. So I made this very real. So even though taking a shot at the CLS thing, and even I have experience with businesses, but not necessarily online space and being in front of a camera, so to speak, I realized I'd figure it out. And I was just very grateful that I had that idea. So going that way and not taking the shot was death. And even though this might be scary, it's not worse than death. So we're going to make it pleasurable. Wow. And obviously the rest is history. For other people out there, it's a challenging question. Like, how does everyone identify their passion? For me, a lot of people, they know what their passion is. Now it's time to put together a strategy and create a vision to make your life. Some people, however, don't have a passion, or so they don't think. And they're like, I don't know what I love. For those people, I would suggest journal and just write down. It's very therapeutic. And you'd be surprised at the ideas that come to when you put pen to paper. And when you put yourself in an elevated state, you'll start to gravitate towards things that you really like. And we can obviously begin to identify your passions and so forth. So even if they might not stick out to you, right, you can identify them, you can journal, you can write down, and ideas can come to you. They can start to percolate, and then we can take action from there.
I love that. And I actually love that you mentioned that you associate great pain with going backwards. And I think that became your fuel, because you certainly didn't want to go to death if you would associate that extent. But I think that's true. It's either pain or pleasure that pushes us to go, or it actually pulls us. It doesn't push us, it pulls. And so I think that's a great exercise that people could do, is starting to actually, you could get really dark, like how negative it is, how much you feel unfulfilled in the space you're in. And so that like permeates in you, and that it like fuels up that you're like, no more, So I think that's a great way to look at it. And so talking about NLP, I'm curious, for those that don't know anything about it, and then also are curious to possibly learn more about it themselves because they want to deepen their personal development, what can you recommend? Is there a certain course you took or certification?
Yeah, so for me, I started studying 10 years ago, and to be honest, people have asked me this before. I don't know 100% how I stumbled upon it, but thank God I did. And so just to be clear, like, I feel like if you asked 100 people what NLP is, you might get 100 different answers. I can only tell you what it means to me. The ability to tap into NLP, which I believe is a technology, is to be able to reshape and reprogram the thoughts that go to your brain, so to speak. Like, for example, changing what you associate pain and pleasure to, or elevating your state, which means you can cultivate confidence on command, or even just putting together strategies and visions. Like when I put together the whole strategy to launch CLS, like, it was very specific. I used a similar strategy that Walt Disney himself used to launch Disneyland and so forth. And so I just love everything about it. In regards to like where to begin studying, I would say just Google it and look around. But one of the books that I read early on was Introduction to NLP. It was a book by Richard Bandler, who actually co-created NLP. And it's a pretty easy read. And it basically gives you logistics on how to use some of the concepts. And the things I love about NLP is they're tangible tools, right? Like, look, I don't know about therapy that much. I'm not that experienced with it. But from what I understand, you kind of sit there and you vent and you have conversations. That's great. But with NLP, what stuck out to me about it was there's actual tools that you can begin to apply immediately that are actionable. Like, for example, modeling and anchoring. You can model different people that you hold in high regard, grip attributes that made them successful, and mold them onto yourself. And then you can immediately start elevating your state and building upon your confidence. And I'm sure that you acknowledge, from an elevated state, it's not what can I do, it's what can't you do. So just dive into NLP. I don't think you can go wrong with it. If anything else, it's just another tool in the arsenal that you have.
Yeah. Oh, so amazing. Okay. So talking about how you pivoted, so you immediately came up with the name. I love that you played on your initials. That's amazing. But let's talk about this reverse engineering. And you also mentioned this was Walt Disney's formula. So what is this? Because we need to know, for any of those that have discovered their passion, that they want to now implement it and make that reality, or that vision come to reality. How do we reverse engineer? What's the steps? Give it to us.
Yeah, so this exercise is probably worth $1 billion if you utilize it correctly. So this is what I did. So when I thought of CLS, first I said, what does this thing look like in a couple of years from now? Let's be very specific. And so I wanted to become the Apple of personal development: sleek, expensive, and the top brands on the planet, even bigger than Tony Robbins, so to speak. And I know people are listening and I can hear the eye rolling. They probably think about it in my mind, but I think you got to be a little bit. And I didn't want to be bigger than Tony Robbins as an ego thing. Like, this was never about Craig. CLS, or Cultivate Lasting Symphony, is about a beacon of hope, faith, and transformation. Like, so that anybody, no matter what they're going through or what they've been through, change doesn't take as long as people think. You could revamp your mindset and you could start to have big results. And so that's what I wanted for this thing. Now it's like, okay, that's a pretty big dream. How are we going to turn that into reality? And so I did this exercise, which I teach my program. I call it Project Moonshot, where essentially you set up 3 chairs in a room and you have 3 different perspectives for each chair. So for example, the first one is the dreamer. That's where you allow yourself to dream as big as you possibly can. What does this thing look like with no restrictions, no limitations? I mean, like the little kid in you. Like, I want this to be the biggest thing ever. I want to be selling out stadiums of 100,000 people. I want to superset that with a podcast. It's the most downloaded on planet Earth, being the hottest ticket in town for speaking engagements, masterminds, the whole 9. Then you step into the second chair. From a whole different perspective, you're looking at this thing. Now, all of a sudden, you're the critic. And this should be easy for most people because a lot of people are their own worst critic, right? So I give you full permission to shred yourself to smithereens. Well, it's not going to work because who's going to listen to you? You don't have any experience being on social media or filming or, selling out stadiums, or what are your testimonials and so forth. You don't have experience with the online business. Then you step into the third chair, which is the realist perspective. Now it's like, okay, the dreamer wanted to do this. The critic said, these are the obstacles and the challenges that you're going to have. Now as the realist, you come in, you say, well, here's how it is going to work. You did start 2 businesses from the ground up into 8-figure juggernauts. You do have success in those fields. You did go from not being able to run a mile to conquering 4 marathons that very year. You are charismatic and you have a good ability to communicate. You'll get better at sharing on social media and so forth. And so I think the best part about this exercise, Erica, is it allows you to foresee every potential obstacle or challenge that comes our way. So now we're playing chess, not checkers. We're playing 10 moves ahead, so to speak. So now when the adversity comes, because as you know, any entrepreneur doesn't go up in a straight line, it's more like this, there will be challenges. But now you're prepared for every curveball that comes your way and you already have a game plan for it. So that gives you a ton of confidence, or anyone out there that's looking to conquer a big moonshot, gives you a ton of confidence that you're prepared for every step of the way on this journey of conquering this big epic moonshot. Very effective exercise.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I am going to totally do this in my own time as well. I highly recommend anybody that has a vision for anything to do this. That was brilliant. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. And let's talk about this confidence, because when you started this, so you mentioned you started this in COVID. So a year ago, I don't even know what month you started, but relatively a year ago. And you have created, I looked at your website, you have many programs, you have a mastermind, you have your podcast, you have everything. I mean, you pretty much like dialed it completely full speed ahead on the online space. And of course, you're speaking a lot and you're showing up in your lives almost daily. So you have gone full force. So confidence, when we talk about that, confidence is something that relatively we are born with, but there's so many things that smush that confidence. Dilute it because of all these challenges we go through and all, of course, our subconscious beliefs, and we shut ourselves down. So when you started all this, assuming you're entering a whole new space, you weren't a coach, of course, you've been an entrepreneur, but how did you build this confidence to do the darn thing?
Yeah, it's funny you ask this because it hasn't even been a year yet, believe it or not, since CLS. And my team and I were going back to the beginning. They were going to create a video of like year 1. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at some of the footage from the beginning, like when I was just putting out, as I like to call them, the mixtapes, which are like little inspirational videos with tangible tools to use and so forth. And I'm looking back now and I'm thinking to myself, like, that was pretty ballsy, like just putting myself out there in the beginning with no social media presence. And to be honest with you, this might surprise you, but I'm more of an introvert. And so I really had to step out of my comfort zone, make myself uncomfortable when I started this. And looking back now, it's interesting to see. But the truth of the matter is though, I acknowledge that I was so miserable going backwards that I was going to make this happen or I was going to die trying. In other words, I'm absolutely obsessed with chasing this dream and helping billions of people. And so when I started putting out content, I felt uncomfortable in the beginning, but I also know from my life experience that when you feel uncomfortable, you're onto something. And on the flip side, this is very valuable for the audience. If you don't feel uncomfortable, you're probably not stretching yourself enough for real growth. So make no mistake about it. I felt a little uncomfortable. I did my modeling tools. I was modeling James Bond and Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day from his prime and so forth. And, I kind of took the thinking out of it. And I paid attention to the task at hand. Let's make a video. Let's tell the world what we're doing. My name is Craig Siegel. I'm starting Cultivate Lasting Symphony. I want to help everyone get on fire and grab that edge. Put that out. Then I started putting out more content and so forth. And, I'm very humbled to say that people started gravitating towards the message, but also like, I knew that what I was saying in the videos, most importantly, was very valuable. It wasn't just an inspirational speech. There were actual tangible tools that people can apply. And if people can't get behind that, then, it is what it is. But I'm going to be my most authentic self and let's take a shot at this thing. And so I just kept doing it and I was having so much fun. And, I just feel so aligned to it. So even though I feel uncomfortable, I'm very grateful for this opportunity and that the idea came to me in the first place. And so I started to put more out and it, obviously with experience comes the confidence. All of a sudden it's like, it's not my first video. I've done this 6 times before, 15 times, 20 times. And I'll never forget like my first Instagram live. I didn't even know what to do, how to hop on. Now I do them all the time and so forth. So sometimes you just got to take some messy action. There's never going to be a perfect time. You just got to get in there and make things happen.
Absolutely. And it's funny, when I started doing my podcast, so I've been doing it over 2 years now. And how many episodes? I'm like 107 in or something along the line.
Yeah.
But when I first started the podcast, mind you, okay, I'm an introvert relatively, and I feel not confident speaking. Like that's my weak zone, if you want to say. I feel like I grew up with a learning disability that's auditory memory disorder. So I actually have a hard time remembering things, short-term memory. And so when I first started my podcast, number one, wouldn't do video, forget it, because I needed to look at my notes. I needed to know what I was asking them so I could stay on track. And then the pandemic hit and I'm like, okay, everyone was going on video. And finally, I listened to this little voice, you need to do it too. And so I remember when I was first doing a video and it was scary at first, but I'm like, I got to do it. And now it's, if anything, number one, I am able to see you, interact with you. And it's more, I feel this is more authentic because when you're hiding behind a camera, I feel that it's almost like you're not showing your true colors. You know what I mean? So you just got to do the darn thing. Like you said, if you're not uncomfortable, you're either not growing or you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And the only way we could advance in life is if we're constantly stepping outside our comfort zone. So I love that you mentioned that. So it's just, we have to do the darn thing.
By the way, you seem like a natural, I just have to say. So
you're sweet.
I'm surprised to hear that you said that, but I'm also very proud of you. Doing great.
Thank you. Exactly. It's all, number one, and everyone that is listening to this, you're not going to be really phenomenal at first. Like nobody's going to be so good at something they try new the first time, unless they're behind the scene trying to over and over and over and over and over. Right. So we're all just taking imperfect action and just doing the darn thing because we are so driven to make the thing happen.
100%.
So let's talk about revamping the mindset. You obviously use this tagline a lot. What does that look like? And I mean, I've talked to so many people about mindset and the difference between, of course, the mind and the brain, which is a whole subject in itself, but the mindset, it is truly the one thing that will lead us to a path of success is our mindset. So let's talk about revamping the mindset.
Yeah, so it's like you said, it'll lead us to the path of success or it'll destroy us, right? So that's why it's the most important thing to get right. And like, I always tell people, like, when you want to work out and get in good shape, like, what do you have to do, right? You have to exercise a lot, right? Like, let's just say 5 times a week to look really good. So the mind's no different. You have to constantly be sharpening the axe and working on yourself. In fact, the mind's even more important realistically than physicality. So, because once you get that right, then the whole world begins to shift and change to like. And so when I talk about revamping the mindset, a lot of people think they're broken or they're, like they need to be fixed. And I'm a big believer in that nobody's broken. It's just their frame is a little corrupted or warped, or they've been conditioned to be a certain way for quite some time. And when you revamp that frame, then all of a sudden you're looking at everything from a different perspective. And I'll even challenge my clients or the audience to just look at, like, literally tilt your head and look at it from a different light, right? So things that you used to associate pain to, now you can associate pleasure to, and so forth. And just to give you a weird example, like, for so long, I would go out to these business dinners, and all these like entrepreneurs and people would always order like seafood and sushi. And I had this conception in my mind that I hated seafood for my whole life. Did I really, or was it my perception of it? Right? I thought I hated the smell. I thought it didn't taste good. So finally I was like, I want to contribute. So I did an exercise and I realized that I've been programmed to hate the smell of seafood and what I thought the taste of it was and so forth. And then I changed that and I made it pleasurable. Just like that. I was like, I actually don't hate the smell of it. That was just a perception that I created. And I made it pleasurable. And now to this very day, 2 spicy tuna rolls of brown rice with a side of spicy mayo, aka sushi, is one of my go-tos. And you can do that exercise with anything. Anything that you've been conditioned to feel a certain way for is just that. You've been conditioned. You weren't born with it. So you can change that. Also, like when I talked about earlier in the conversation, like modeling, right? Like grabbing attributes from people, like so you can elevate your state. And even like Beyonce does something similar. Like when she's on stage, she taps into a character I think she calls Sasha Fierce.
Right.
And then off stage, she's a completely different person. But when she's on stage, I don't think you can deny she's one of the greatest performers ever. So she taps into that. And then she's not really thinking like Beyonce. She's thinking like Sasha Fierce. So when I do my modeling, like when I first started CLS and I was doing those videos, I was acting like James Bond would. Like, what would be the quality of that guy's thoughts? Would he be nervous? No. Would he be super assertive and charismatic? Absolutely. So it takes the thinking out of it. Then all of a sudden you start applying these in different areas, whether it be relationships, right? Like if I wanted to approach a pretty girl at the bar, whatever the case may be, instead of being shy, I can model someone that's obviously had success with it. And once you start to do this, you realize that you can reprogram everything that you thought was permanent, and then you can change everything. Other concepts include a lot of people are living in their past. They have shackles on from past trauma, whatever that may be. People are living inside their story as opposed to on top of their story. So I challenge them to own it, to not let it, have them sitting in quicksand, so to speak. Like it doesn't have to hold you back forever. You can own that story and be on top of it and so forth. And so by revamping the mindset, you can do all these things. You can cultivate confidence on command. You could change your perception to things. And you could literally open up a whole new world of possibilities for yourself out there.
I love it. Perspective is everything. Everything. And actually, just out of curiosity, so somebody clearly understands this, because this is not being inauthentic to who you are when you model somebody. So if you could kind of explain that, just so people get clarity that it's not you trying to be somebody else.
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me be clear. Like if I'm modeling someone, right? When I go to bed at night, like I'm still Craig. It's just that I've had life experience. I see people that have had success in different areas that maybe I have not, right? Whether it's a character from a movie, a character from a book, a celebrity, a professional athlete, whatever the case may be. If I see people having success in areas that I might not be experienced in, if I don't model what they're doing correctly to have that success, then the joke's on me, because like newsflash, like we're not going to live twice. You only get to do this thing once. So I like to keep a journal of people that have had success in different areas and what are the attributes that they possess that's made them successful. Mm-hmm. And then I like to tap into those things when I need to do certain things. And so for the audience out there, you're not becoming a different person, so to speak. Yes, you can do that on a very deep level in certain circumstances, but what you and I are discussing right now is just simply seeing what other people do or what are the quality of their thoughts to have success, and then borrowing those attributes. And when you start to do it enough, they start to become you, and then it becomes second nature. But make no mistake about it, I'm still Craig, you're still Erica, we're still authentic. We're just using other traits from people that have been successful in areas that we want to be successful in.
Absolutely. And I know you say this quite often. You talk about change could be quicker than we think it to be. And some people will say opposite of this, that change takes a while, but you seem to think it actually could happen quite rapidly. And why is that?
Well, really just by the situations that we just spoke about, right? Like modeling, like for people that don't have confidence or they're afraid to take action because they live with fear and doubt. Well, if you're modeling someone on a very deep level who does not have fear and doubt and who is very successful, then whatever activity you're about to step into, you're going to act like that. And then all of a sudden you do change instantly because you no longer have that fear and doubt or lack of confidence. So, and also, like I keep saying, like when you're in that confident, elevated state, there's literally nothing that you can't do. I mean, self-belief will take you anywhere you need to go in life. You have to believe in yourself. As long as it's possible, you can get it done. And also, like, look at the situation I gave you earlier, like with sushi and stuff like that. Like, it took me to just sit down and do the exercise and realize, like, and it's similar to when I started running these marathons. Like, I had this perception that I hated seafood, but that's all it was a perception. I had this perception that I couldn't run far because I'd always lifted weights. And, you know, I'm not tall and lean. I'm on the shorter side and stocky. But when I started running and I got tired in the beginning, was I really tired or was it my perception of the effort that I was putting out there? And then I realized it was just that. And then very instantly, I started running much further without getting tired, so to speak. And so I do believe change doesn't take long. It just requires the proper tools and techniques that we're speaking about here to be able to apply them.
Yeah. And then can you kind of bring us back to a moment where you felt that you had trouble, like you were facing something in your journey of, let's say, transitioning into CLS? What in your challenge did you ever consider giving up, or where did you get the drive to continue? Like I don't think CLS is the example because you're so passionate and driven, but let's talk about a past experience. Did you ever feel like, you know, that you were just so drained and like overwhelmed and you wanted to quit, but what kept you from not quitting?
I never quit on anything, ever. But like at my last business, right before I transitioned to CLS, I was definitely not happy. And I was actually kind of miserable, if I'm being, 100% transparent with you. I just didn't realize it yet until I had that moment in the beginning of the pandemic to really reassess. And especially once I thought of CLS, then I realized, I don't want to go back there. So I'm gonna do everything it takes to make CLS work. So I never really quit or wanted to quit. I've had my moments, make no mistake about it, where like I had a little bit of uncertainty. But ultimately, I know that by sharpening the axe, going back to my journaling, pulling some excerpts out of my favorite books and so forth, I'll always be able to pump myself up. And, I've shown myself time and time again that I could do anything I put my mind to. So I think in life, as long as, you're doing things that are right or somewhat aligned with what you want to do, if you just keep pushing and don't give up, you'll get to where you need to go. Obviously, you need to have the right strategies and so forth. But no, I never felt like quitting, if I'm being honest with you.
Awesome. And then, so I know you briefly said that underneath your breath that you're not too balanced right now. I get you. I'm with you. But what are your non-negotiables? Like you have to keep your energy up. So what are those non-negotiables that, that keep you alive here today?
So I work out every single morning without fail. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that to the audience, just for me personally. Every day I wake up, I go through my non-negotiables, I journal a little bit, I do some gratitude, I say some prayers, and I start my day, and then I work out, and then I bang that out. And the reason why I do it every day, aside from looking great, which is obviously a bonus, and also I'm training for the Chicago Marathon right now, which is on October 10th. Actually, the Chicago Marathon is training for me. But the reason I work out every single day is because it gives me a psychological advantage. Like it gives me an edge on the world, because by the time I'm done with my workout, most of the world probably hasn't even had their first cup of coffee. And that just gives me like a psychological advantage. I feel like I'm ahead of the game, so to speak. I'm ahead of the curve. And so for me, that's a non-negotiable. And I haven't missed a workout. This is going to sound a little nuts. And I don't think I've even ever publicly said this, but I haven't missed a workout in like a few years.
Every day?
Yeah, every single day.
Do you weight train every day, or is it just any form of movement?
No. So yeah, any form of movement. But really, if I'm being honest, I either run, which I do most of the time, especially because I'm training now 5 days a week. And then the other 2 days, or sometimes 3, if I only run 4, I go upstairs and use the weight room, whatever the case may be. And like if I'm traveling, then I'll have to get a little creative, whatever the case may be. I'll do some movement and so forth. But for me, that's a non-negotiable. And also family time. I have the closest family there is. I'm super close to my parents who live in Long Island. And also my brother Mark, who's my absolute best friend in the world. He has a little baby, my little nephew who just turned 1 year young yesterday, who's so cute and adorable. So any weekend that we can all get together and hang out, that's obviously a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah, I completely relate when it comes to working out or movement. I think that is the best way to up your energy or just to feel good. Like it could change your state in any moment, I believe. I mean, I know some people they're not there yet, but I think if you just keep going, once you start to feel good in your body and you feel like you're doing good to your body, naturally gives you energy and you just want to do more good to yourself and your body. So it's the best. Exactly. Yeah. So I know a lot of people, when they're going into something new, pursuing a new passion, purpose, or whatever you want to call it, their vision, procrastination creeps in because it's overwhelming. There's so much to do. How could we avoid this procrastination, which is so, so bad?
So it's simple. In a word, structure. Give yourself structure and discipline, and that'll take away the thinking. And on the flip side, if you don't have structure, my personal opinion is that will lead to procrastination, because then you wake up and you're freestyling or you're going rogue, so to speak. It's very easy to procrastinate. But when you have things to do every day, like you have a routine, so to speak, then you just go through it. You know, not necessarily like you're in the military, but like you check things off the list, you bang things out, and you follow your calendar and you make stuff happen. And that just removes, at least for me personally, all potential for procrastination. So in a word, just to keep it simple, to give yourself some structure, and that'll also give you momentum.
Yes. I mean, that is obviously the best thing we could do for ourselves is actually scheduling it, because that's the only way we could actually be organized to get it done. So when do you schedule out your weeks, or what do you suggest people do by the day, or I don't know if you have help?
So like, I'm sure everyone has a morning routine that I would suggest making that, like you said earlier, a non-negotiable. This way, you get up, you do your things, and then you have an edge over the world. In regards to, I have a team. I'm very grateful that as CLS continues to grow, at a very rapid pace. I'm able to hire, and I have a team, like you met my assistant Jessica before this, who I absolutely love. You got to find people you could trust, people that are obsessed, just like me, or just like you, like with the brand. Like, they love it. They believe in it. It's not a job to them. So that's what I've been able to assemble myself with. And trust me, it's not easy to find. I acknowledge that. So for the audience listening, when you do find the right people around you that are not only working with you, but almost like family, do right by them and keep them. And so I had them around, and ultimately I don't like to use the word busy, productive, but we have so much going on a daily basis, let alone a weekly basis. So they take care of the calendars. I do my thing, I show up, and I make sure I'm very present in every single thing that I do. I mean, I don't care if it's, having the biggest celebrity in the world on my podcast or speaking to the doorman downstairs. Like, I just want to be very present, and I want to make sure that interaction, that person leaves with an elevated state and so forth. But in regards to my schedule, it's a little bit crazy because I'm working so hard and I'm really building this thing. And like I said, I'm obsessed with it. So we have different things going on every single day, whether it's a speaking engagement or I'm filming a podcast on my show, or I'm a guest on an unbelievable show like yours here today, or I have a coaching call, or I'm doing a mastermind, or we just launched our membership this week. So I'm teaching in that and doing training. There's so much going on. So you got to be a student of the calendar. I'll say that.
Wow. Okay. Well, so if you were to spit out 3 characteristics of someone that is successful, what are those 3 that are the standout that you must have to be successful?
In my personal opinion, I would say passion, gratitude, energy. I'll even throw in a couple more: integrity, and grit. And like our mutual friend Amberly likes to talk about, you got to be gritty.
Yes, I love it. So what is your big vision for CLS? You kind of briefly mentioned this, but like, what is your mission that you want to accomplish with others that are part of the CLS experience?
Simply put, I want to be able to elevate billions of lives of people's states. I want to help revamp billions of mindsets. I want people to understand that there is a better life out there for them and that each and every person is worthy of living the life that they desire. And I understand things have happened, but we don't have to be stuck inside our story. Like I said earlier, we can stand on top of that story. We can own it, so to speak. We could change what we associate pain and pleasure to. We could take action. We can make things happen. And we can look at the world from a different perspective, which I believe will open everything up. And so I just want to help elevate people and get them that fire and that zest for life and help them locate and identify that passion and purpose so they can make the absolute most of the short time we have here on earth.
You know, kids need this. That's what I like. I always think about this. Like, if we only learned all these things, everything from NLP and, how to actually like even use our mindset to work for us in school, like how much further we would be. It's like one of my pet peeves, like the schooling system. And just, I wish, I don't want to say mental health, but more was addressed in school or, in our youth that could help us in life. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I do. Like, look, I graduated college and that's cool and I'm very grateful, but like, they never really teach you like how to learn, right? They teach you what the curriculum is, but they don't like teach you how to learn, right? Like they don't teach you like how to study the mind and like NLP or like even just like sharpening the axe, getting inspired with stuff like this. So, that's the stuff that really did it for me, which changed the course of my life. So I definitely wish that they had a little bit more of that. And God willing, when I have a kid one day, and even my nephew now, I want to instill them at a young age, just to always help them be uplifted and be inspired and have them learning and even things that just like have mental stimulation, like chess or whatever the case may be. So I definitely agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Well, what else do you think you could leave with our audience today that will help them start to shift their perspective, revamp their mindset, and really take some action after listening to this to change the trajectory of their life like that?
So I thought you never asked. So I challenge everybody, all the amazing people that listen to Erica's podcast, go to the mirror ASAP. Look yourself in the mirror and say 3 words. Why not you? Why not you? Because if it's not you, it's going to be someone else. So if you have a dream, which I hope that you do, or you have a passion or a purpose, or you have a fire in you that's burning, you want to do something, or maybe you're just not fulfilled with what you're currently doing. Ask yourself, why not you? And then let's put together a strategy, cultivate a vision, reverse engineer, we'll take some baby steps, whatever the case may be, but you can do it. You are worthy of accomplishing your dreams and conquering big moonshots and doing cool things and making the most use of our time here on earth, so to speak. So a lot of people have big ideas and they're afraid to take action, living in fear and doubt. And so I challenge you to look yourself in the mirror and say, why not you? And once you realize that there is no great reason as to why you can't do that, let's do this and let's take some messy action.
I love it. Amazing. And you're an example of this because everything you've started has been from zero. You have, I believe you've mentioned 2 8-figure businesses. I don't know if you still have them standing, if you're still a part of it. Yeah. Obviously, what you're building now, which is growing rapidly, you have everything under the sun, under CLS. So you have started from zero. So again, taking imperfect action and just doing the darn thing and just having that vision pulling you and the pleasure you seek in life, that fulfilled life. This has been amazing. I always ask my guests, and you kind of already shared something, but if you were to leave, I don't know if you have on your heart to write a book, but if you were to leave on the first page, a lesson that you want to leave with others that you've learned in your life that you feel anybody needs to hear right now, what would that message be on the first page of the book?
So quick surprise, I'm actually just started writing my first book, which is
of course, amongst everything else.
But in regards to your lesson, it's a very powerful question and I love to be challenged. So I'm glad that you asked this, but ultimately I would say this. People often ask me, like, do I have any regrets? And the truth of the matter is I don't regret anything because I believe everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. I'm exactly where I need to be right now to live out my vision and help people and so forth. And I wouldn't change a thing. But if I had to pick one, the only thing I would say is this. I wish that sooner or earlier on in my life, I reached out and I asked for support and I found a mentor and I was able to accumulate guidance from people that had experience doing things that I wanted to be good and that I didn't have. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now and help mentoring and guiding people to fulfill their destinies and so forth. And so, no, simply put, ask for support. Don't be shy. Don't think of asking for help as a pain. I challenge you to change your perspective and think about this. Asking for help, support, guidance is actually a pleasure. And if you don't do that and you think you have to do it alone, associate pain with that concept, because we don't get to be here forever. We don't have a sequel. Not speaking about religions, whatever the case may be, but there's a short time here. So reach out, ask for support, find guidance, even if it's just an indirect mentor. Follow someone on social media who's doing great things. Take a look at what they're doing. Listen to Erica's podcast, whatever the case may be. Just grab tools and tangible techniques from wherever you can and be a sponge and don't have an ego.
Perfect. Love that advice. So valuable, because I think so many of us are afraid of asking. I remember, who told me this? Greg Reed. Do you know Greg Reed?
It sounds familiar.
He's definitely a very successful man that rubs elbows with a lot of successful people, but he said the same thing, is that just ask. People, especially successful people, they like to help, but you just have to be specific. So when you ask for help, is just be specific so you don't waste somebody's time too much. And I think it's it's actually amazing how many people want to help, but you just have to, again, be uncomfortable and just do the darn thing and ask.
And I love what you just said too. Be very specific, be intentional.
Yeah, it's really important. But I guess, again, as you said, you journal, and that's how you uncover what specific things you want and the vision you're looking to obtain. So we have to take put the work in and do the homework and journal and kind of, brain dump everything in our mind, and maybe even writing down those people we can reach out to, which would be really helpful. So
100%.
Anyways, Craig, this has been such an honor. Where could people best find you? I know we've talked about CLS so many times.
I think the best place to find me where I hang out the most probably be Instagram at Craig Siegel _CLS. The website, cultivatelastingsymphony.com, which has all our programs and membership and so forth. And then obviously wherever you listen to podcasts, the CLS experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Craig. This has been such an honor. Thank you for all the fire you bring and how much you are wanting to impact this world and everything you continue to do. Thank you so much.
Erica, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I'm a big fan of yours and I definitely feel a great connection. I love what you're doing, and you have my word. This will definitely not be the last time that you and I collaborate.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.